My name is Heather Wilson, and I'm 34 years old. I've always been the black sheep of my family, the one who never quite fit in. Over the years, all three of my siblings banned me from their weddings, each exclusion cutting deeper than the last. When I finally found love with Ryan, I made the difficult decision not to invite my siblings to our wedding. Then came my mother's phone call with an ultimatum that brought everything to a head. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Growing up as the youngest of 4 children in suburban Boston shaped my entire identity. Our family had a clear hierarchy, with my eldest sister Kimberly, now 40, at the top, followed by my brother James, 38, and my other sister Melissa, 36. I was always trailing behind, trying to find my place. Our parents, Margaret and Robert Wilson, provided us with a comfortable upper-middle-class upbringing. My father built a successful law practice that afforded us a spacious home in a good neighborhood and private school education. My mother, ever conscious of social standing, was deeply invested in crafting the perfect family image. She organized professional family photo shoots twice a year, managed our social calendar meticulously, and ensured we were involved in all the right activities. The contrast between my siblings and me was apparent from an early age. Kimberly was the academic star, collecting straight A's and academic awards with seemingly effortless grace. James excelled in every sport he touched, bringing home trophies and earning college recruitment attention by high school. Melissa combined both academic and athletic prowess, while also being incredibly popular and socially savvy. And then there was me. From kindergarten, I gravitated toward art supplies instead of textbooks, preferred creating music to competitive sports, and found my joy in creative expression rather than structured achievement. My report cards consistently noted that I was creative and marched to my own drummer, code for not fitting the mold my siblings had established. Heather needs to apply herself more like her siblings, became a common refrain from teachers and parents alike. I vividly remember my first clear experience of sibling exclusion. I was 7, eagerly waiting to join a backyard game my siblings had organized with neighborhood kids. Kimberly, then 13, looked me up and down and said, "You're too little. You'll just mess it up." When I protested, James backed her up. "We need serious players, Heather." Melissa, always following their lead, simply shrugged apologetically. I watched from my bedroom window as they played for hours, the sting of rejection burning in my chest. This pattern repeated throughout my childhood, their shared interests, inside jokes, and activities creating a tight trio while I orbited on the periphery. My parents' subtle favoritism only reinforced this division. My siblings' academic certificates and sports trophies were prominently displayed in the living room, while my art contest wins and creative achievements were relegated to my bedroom walls or briefly acknowledged before being forgotten. By high school, I had embraced my outsider status through mild rebellion. I dyed streaks of purple in my hair, adopted a more artistic style of dress, and fully immersed myself in the drama department and art studio. I found my people there, other creative souls who valued expression over conformity. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere, even if it wasn't within my own family. My high school graduation should have been a moment of pride, but instead became another painful memory. I had been accepted to the Rhode Island School of Design, a prestigious art college that was extremely difficult to get into. At our family celebration dinner, my father raised his glass and said, "While it's not Brown or Harvard, we're glad Heather found something that suits her unusual talents." My mother quickly added, "And who knows? She might still decide to pursue a more practical degree once she gets this art phase out of her system." My siblings exchanged knowing glances, as if my achievement was somehow less valuable than their conventional successes. I smiled through it, but inside, the familiar hurt deepened. That night, I made a promise to myself that I would build a life where my passions and choices were celebrated, not dismissed. My years at the Rhode Island School of Design were transformative. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who understood the drive to create and the deep satisfaction of bringing something new into the world. My professors recognized and nurtured my talent in graphic design, and I thrived in this environment where creativity was the currency, not conformity. While I was blooming in art school, my contact with family became increasingly sporadic and strained. My parents provided the minimum financial support required for college expenses, but emotional support was virtually non-existent. Our phone calls followed a predictable pattern. Brief inquiries about my studies followed by lengthy updates about my siblings' more impressive achievements. James just got accepted to Harvard Law, my mother announced during one call my sophomore year, her voice brimming with pride. And Melissa is on the dean's list again at Dartmouth. Kimberly's being considered for a junior partnership at her firm already. When I shared news about winning a student design competition judged by industry professionals, the response was tepid at best. That's nice, dear. Is that something that can lead to a real job? By my junior year, I had stopped sharing my accomplishments altogether. What was the point? Meanwhile, my siblings continued their march down traditional paths of success. James followed our father into law. Kimberly completed her MBA and landed a position at a prestigious consulting firm. Melissa pursued medical school, specializing in dermatology. The first major family rift occurred during my senior year of college. Kimberly got engaged to Thomas, a fellow consultant with the right pedigree and connections. The wedding planning immediately became the center of all family conversations and gatherings. Initially, I was included in these discussions. During a weekend visit home, Kimberly showed me her wedding inspiration board and asked for my artistic opinion. For a brief, shining moment, I felt included, valued for my creative perspective. I spent hours helping her refine her color palette and suggesting unique design elements that would make her wedding distinctive. You know, you really do have a good eye, Heather, she admitted. Maybe you could help with some of the visual elements. That spark of connection was short-lived. As the wedding plans progressed, I noticed I was being gradually sidelined. Calls about bridesmaids' dresses didn't include me. Family emails about shower planning omitted my address. Finally, during Thanksgiving break, Kimberly took me aside. About the wedding, Heather. I've been thinking, I don't think you'd be a good fit for the bridal party. What do you mean? I asked, genuinely confused. I thought we were connecting over all this. It's just that. Well, the bridesmaids all have a certain look, you know? And your style is so different. Plus, Thomas's family is very traditional, and your purple hair and tattoo might not photograph well with the aesthetic we're going for. The hurt must have shown on my face because she quickly added, you can still help behind the scenes. Your creative input has been really interesting. The final blow came 2 months before the wedding. I had voiced a gentle disagreement about some gaudy centerpieces my mother and Kimberly had selected, suggesting a more elegant alternative. 3 days later, my mother called. Kimberly thinks it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding, she said bluntly. She feels you're not supportive of her vision and might cause tension on her special day. Not attend? She's my sister. I protested, tears welling up. Well, if you had tried harder to fit in and not always insist on being so different, maybe this wouldn't be happening, my mother replied. Can't you just once think about someone beside yourself? I was devastated. When I called my father, hoping for intervention, he merely sighed. Your mother and Kimberly have put a lot of work into this wedding. Let's not create more drama. The day of Kimberly's wedding, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through social media as pictures appeared in real time. There were my parents, beaming proudly. James and Melissa in the wedding party, looking picture perfect. Extended family I hadn't seen in years. Everyone together, celebrating, while I had been erased from the family narrative. The exclusion sent me into a depression that lasted months. With the help of therapy, I slowly rebuilt my sense of self-worth, recognizing that my family's inability to accept me wasn't a reflection of my value as a person. I graduated with honors, landed a job at a boutique design agency in Boston, and began building a life filled with people who appreciated me for exactly who I was. My friends became my chosen family. Emma, my roommate and fellow designer, showed me what unconditional support felt like. My colleague Marcus and his partner invited me to holiday dinners when I couldn't face going home. My mentor at work, Catherine, recognized my talent and pushed me to develop professionally in ways my family never had. These connections helped heal the wounds of exclusion, but the deepest cut was yet to come. 2 years after Kimberly's wedding, James got engaged to Amanda, a woman from a wealthy Connecticut family who seemed to view me with suspicion from our first meeting. Despite the hurt from Kimberly's wedding, I made an effort to connect with my future sister-in-law, sending her a handmade congratulations card and offering to help with any design elements for their wedding. James called me a week later, his tone awkwardly formal. "Heather, thanks for the card. Amanda thought it was unique." "I'd love to get to know her better," I said hopefully. "Maybe we could have lunch sometime?" There was a pause. "Look, I should probably tell you. Amanda has heard stories about you from the family. She's a bit concerned that you might not fit with the wedding we're planning." "What stories?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "You know, about how you always need to stand out and do things your way. The drama around Kimberly's wedding. Amanda wants everything to be perfect." I took a deep breath. "James, I never created any drama. I was excluded because I didn't fit some arbitrary image Kimberly wanted." "That's not how the family remembers it," he replied. "Anyway, we're keeping the wedding very small. Immediate family only, really." The familiar pain of rejection washed over me again. "I am immediate family, James. You know what I mean. Look, I'll talk to Amanda, but don't get your hopes up." The invitation never came. When I called my mother to express my hurt, she was dismissive. "James and Amanda want a certain type of wedding. Why must you make everything about you?" Weeks later, I discovered through social media that the very small wedding had over 200 guests, including distant cousins and family friends I barely knew. There were sorority sisters, college roommates, and colleagues galore. Everyone except me. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects and building my portfolio. The distance between my family and me grew, our communication reduced to obligatory birthday calls and tense holiday gatherings where I felt like an unwelcome guest rather than a beloved daughter and sister. Then came Melissa's engagement, less than a year after James's wedding. By this point, I had moved to a small apartment in Cambridge and was establishing myself professionally. Despite the previous rejections, I still harbored hope that Melissa, who had occasionally shown me kindness growing up, might break the pattern. I reached out to her directly, suggesting we meet for coffee to reconnect. To my surprise, she agreed. We met at a cafe halfway between our homes, and for the first hour, the conversation was pleasant if somewhat superficial. She shared details about her fiancé, Michael, a surgeon she'd met during her residency, and their plans for a destination wedding in the Napa Valley. When there was a lull in the conversation, I decided to address the elephant in the room. "Melissa, I've missed being part of your life, and James's and Kimberly's too. I know we're different, but we're still family. I'd really love to be at your wedding." Melissa's expression changed, her smile becoming fixed. "Heather, I appreciate you saying that, but I need to be honest. Michael and I have a vision for our wedding, and it's very sophisticated, very curated. And I don't fit that vision," I concluded flatly. "It's not personal," she insisted, though it was clearly exactly that. "It's just that every element of the wedding needs to work together harmoniously. Mom agrees with me on this." That evening, I received a text from my mother. "Melissa told me about your conversation. Why must you always push? Some things aren't about you." The final showdown occurred at Christmas that year. I had debated not attending the family gathering but ultimately decided to go, partly out of stubborn determination not to be completely erased from the family. The tension was palpable from the moment I arrived. We made it through dinner with surface-level pleasantries, but when the conversation inevitably turned to Melissa's wedding plans, I could no longer maintain the facade. "Will anyone acknowledge the fact that I've been explicitly excluded from all of your weddings?" I asked during a lull in the conversation. "Does anyone else find that incredibly hurtful?" Silence fell over the dining room. Then Kimberly sighed dramatically. "Here we go again. Heather making everything about herself. This is about me." I countered. "About being treated like I'm not really part of this family." James shook his head. You've always insisted on being different, on standing out. Our weddings were about us, not about accommodating your eccentricities. Eccentricities? I'm a professional graphic designer with purple highlights and one small tattoo, not some kind of radical disruptor. Melissa jumped in. It's not just your appearance, Heather. It's your attitude. You've always had to do things your way, always had to question everything instead of just going along. Some of us just want normal, traditional celebrations without worrying about you making some kind of statement. My mother reached across the table to pat my hand condescendingly. Darling, if you would just try harder to fit in with the family, these problems wouldn't happen. We love you, but you make things so difficult. I looked to my father, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. Dad, do you have anything to say? He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Heather, your siblings have the right to plan their weddings as they see fit. Let's not ruin Christmas with this discussion. In that moment, I realized that nothing I could say or do would ever change their perception of me. The role I had been assigned in the family narrative was fixed, the difficult one, the misfit, the problem. I excused myself from the table, packed my overnight bag, and left without saying goodbye, ignoring my mother's calls to stop being so dramatic. On the drive back to my apartment, I made a decision. I would no longer chase their approval or inclusion. I would build a life where I was valued and accepted for exactly who I was. The distance I created wasn't about punishment. It was about self-preservation. I reduced contact to the minimum necessary, declining most family gatherings and keeping our interactions brief and superficial. It was painful but liberating. For the first time, I was prioritizing my own well-being over the fantasy of family acceptance that had never materialized. 6 months after that fateful Christmas, I received an offer for a position at a renowned design agency in Chicago. The opportunity promised creative freedom, professional growth, and a substantial increase in salary. But perhaps most appealing was the chance for a fresh start in a city where no one knew me as the difficult Wilson daughter. I accepted the position, sold most of my furniture, packed my car with essentials, and drove west toward a new chapter. Chicago welcomed me with its vibrant art scene, diverse neighborhoods, and sense of possibility. I found a cozy apartment in Wicker Park, a neighborhood filled with galleries, music venues, and creative energy that resonated with my soul. The new job challenged and invigorated me. My colleagues valued my creative perspective and distinctive aesthetic, the very qualities my family had dismissed as problematic. For the first time in my professional life, I felt fully seen and appreciated. I was 3 months into my Chicago life when I attended the opening of a photography exhibition at a small gallery near my apartment. As I studied a particularly striking black and white photograph of the Chicago skyline at dawn, a voice beside me said, "The way he captured the light breaking through the clouds makes it look almost supernatural, doesn't it?" I turned to find a tall man with kind eyes and an easy smile looking at the same photograph. "That's exactly what I was thinking," I replied. "It's like the buildings are merging from another dimension." His name was Ryan Mitchell, an architectural engineer who shared my appreciation for the intersection of art and structure. We spent the remainder of the evening moving from photograph to photograph, our conversation flowing effortlessly from art to architecture to our shared love of 1970s rock music. Ryan had grown up in Milwaukee but had moved to Chicago 5 years earlier for work. He was thoughtful, genuine, and refreshingly direct. When he asked for my number at the end of the evening, I gave it without hesitation. Our first date stretched from coffee to dinner to a late-night walk along the lakeshore. Unlike previous relationships where I had carefully curated aspects of myself to appear more normal, with Ryan, I felt no need to hide or downplay any part of who I was. He asked thoughtful questions about my design work, listened attentively to my ideas, and seemed genuinely fascinated by my creative process. In Ryan, I found not just a romantic partner, but a true companion who celebrated rather than tolerated my uniqueness. He introduced me to his circle of friends, creative and intellectual people who welcomed me warmly. Weekend trips to Milwaukee introduced me to his family, his parents, Sandra and Michael, and younger sister, Rachel, who embodied what family support could look like. The Mitchell family dinners were revelations. They discussed and debated ideas passionately, but respectfully. Disagreement didn't lead to rejection. It was simply part of the family discourse. Sandra proudly displayed Ryan's childhood drawings alongside Rachel's academic awards. Michael asked thoughtful questions about my design projects and genuinely cared about the answers. "Your family is amazing," I told Ryan after our third visit. "The way you all interact, the way you support each other while still being individuals, it's beautiful." "Isn't that normal?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. I hesitated, unsure how much to share about my own family dynamic. Throughout our relationship, I had offered only vague explanations about my limited family contact, mentioning differences in values and complicated relationships. But as our connection deepened, I knew I needed to share the full truth. One evening, about 8 months into our relationship, we were cooking dinner together in my apartment when Ryan casually mentioned plans for his parents' upcoming anniversary celebration. "You should come," he said, stirring the pasta sauce. "Everyone's been asking when they'll see you again." "I'd love to," I replied, feeling a rush of warmth at being so easily included. Then, before I could overthink it, I added, "It's still strange to me, how welcoming your family is." Ryan looked up. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "I've never told you much about my family, have I?" And then, sitting at my small kitchen table while the pasta water boiled over unnoticed, I shared the full story: the childhood exclusion, the wedding rejections, the constant message that I wasn't quite right, wasn't quite acceptable as I was. Ryan listened without interruption, his expression shifting from surprise to disbelief to anger on my behalf. When I finished, he took my hands in his. "Heather, I need you to hear something. There is nothing wrong with you. Nothing. The way your family treated you says everything about them and nothing about your worth. You are extraordinary exactly as you are." Tears streamed down my face, not from the pain of the memories, but from the healing power of being truly seen and accepted. That night marked a turning point in our relationship and in my own healing journey. Over the next year, Ryan and I grew even closer. We moved in together, combining our book collections and art pieces into a home that reflected both of us. We traveled, explored Chicago's neighborhoods, and built routines and traditions that strengthened our bond. On a crisp autumn evening 2 years after we met, Ryan proposed during a private sunset boat tour on Lake Michigan. The ring was his grandmother's, reset with a unique blue sapphire rather than a traditional diamond, his acknowledgement of my appreciation for the distinctive over the conventional. "You've shown me what it means to live authentically," he said as he slipped the ring onto my finger. "I want to build a life with you where we both get to be exactly who we are." As we began planning our wedding, the question of my family's involvement loomed large. Ryan made it clear that he would support whatever decision I made, but the choice was undeniably complicated. "They're still your family," he said carefully. "If you want them there, we'll make it work." I spent weeks reflecting on what I truly wanted. After much soul-searching and several sessions with my therapist, I made my decision. I would invite my parents, offering them the chance to support me on my terms. But my siblings, who had explicitly excluded me from their celebrations and had made no effort at reconciliation over the years, they would not receive invitations. It wasn't about revenge. It was about recognizing that their presence would bring tension and pain to a day that should be filled with joy and authentic celebration. It was about surrounding ourselves with people who genuinely supported our relationship and celebrated our love. I drafted heartfelt invitations to my parents, explaining that while I wished to include them in this important moment, the invitation did not extend to my siblings. I mailed them with a mixture of anxiety and resolve, knowing the response might be difficult, but feeling certain in my decision. The waiting that followed was excruciating. The call came on a Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks after I had mailed the invitations. Ryan and I were organizing our bookshelves when my phone lit up with my mother's name. "It's her," I said, my stomach instantly nodding. Ryan squeezed my shoulder in silent support as I answered. "Hello, Mom. Heather." Her voice was tight, with controlled anger. "We received your invitation." "Yes," I replied, forcing myself to remain calm. "I hope you and Dad will be able to attend." How could you, she demanded, abandoning any pretense of pleasantry? How could you exclude your own siblings from your wedding? Do you have any idea how hurtful that is? The irony of her question momentarily left me speechless. When I found my voice again, it was steady. Mom, I've been excluded from all 3 of their weddings. Each time, it was made explicitly clear that I wasn't welcome because I didn't fit some image they wanted to project. That was different, she insisted. They had specific visions for their weddings, and you've always insisted on doing things your way. And now I'm doing things my way for my wedding, I replied. I'm creating a celebration surrounded by people who have consistently shown love and support for both Ryan and me. This isn't about your siblings' past decisions, my mother countered. This is about family unity, about being the bigger person. Why is it always my responsibility to be the bigger person? I asked, my frustration mounting. Why am I always expected to overlook their behavior while they're never asked to reconsider theirs? Because you're the one creating drama now, she exclaimed. Your siblings have moved past those old issues. They expected to be invited to your wedding. Kimberly is devastated. James is furious. Melissa can't believe you, would be so petty. Moved past, I echoed incredulously. None of them has ever acknowledged how hurtful their actions were. None of them has ever apologized or made any genuine effort to repair our relationship. My mother's voice took on the patronizing tone I knew all too well. Heather, family relationships require compromise. Sometimes we need to set aside our grievances for the greater good. I have compromised my entire life, I responded, memories flooding back. I compromised when Kimberly told everyone at my 10th birthday party that my art scholarship wasn't a real achievement like her academic awards. I compromised when James deliberately excluded me from family photos at his graduation because my hair wasn't appropriate. I compromised when Melissa told her friends I was adopted because she was embarrassed by how different I was. You're exaggerating, my mother dismissed. Those were childhood squabbles. They were systematic exclusions that you and Dad enabled. I corrected her. And they continued into adulthood with your blessing. There was a pause, and when my mother spoke again, her voice had hardened. Well, I'm going to be clear about this, Heather. If you don't invite your siblings, your father and I won't be attending either. Though I had anticipated this possibility, hearing the ultimatum still felt like a physical blow. So once again, I'm being asked to sacrifice my well-being to maintain a false image of family harmony. That's not what this is about, she insisted. Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, you're asking me to invite people who have consistently rejected me to one of the most important days of my life. People who have never shown any remorse for hurting me. People who, frankly, don't even like me. Of course they like you. They love you, Heather. Your family. Being family should mean more than sharing DNA, I said quietly. It should mean support, acceptance, celebration of each other's happiness. When have they ever offered me that? Before my mother could respond, I heard my father's voice in the background, and then he was on the phone. Heather, this is ridiculous. You need to put this childish resentment aside and do the right thing. The right thing for whom, Dad? I asked. For my siblings, who have made it clear they don't respect me. For you and Mom, who have consistently prioritized their feelings over mine. Or for me and Ryan, who deserve to be surrounded by genuine love and support on our wedding day. This is not a negotiation, my father stated firmly. Either all of us attend, or none of us will be there. Your choice. As the conversation ended, I sat on the edge of our bed, phone clutched in my trembling hand. Ryan sat beside me, arm around my shoulders. They might not come, I whispered, the reality sinking in. My own parents might not attend my wedding. I'm so sorry, Heather, Ryan said, pulling me closer. You deserved better from that conversation. You deserve better from them. The aftermath of the call left me emotionally raw. I cycled through anger, grief, doubt, and resolve. That evening, curled up on our couch with mugs of tea, I broke down. What if I'm making a mistake? I asked Ryan through tears. What if I'm throwing away any chance of reconciliation? Ryan considered his words carefully. Heather, you're not asking for anything unreasonable. You're setting a boundary based on years of hurtful treatment. That's not spite, it's self-respect. The next day, I called Dr. Martinez, my therapist, and scheduled an emergency session. For an hour, I unpacked the conversation with my parents and the complex emotions it had triggered. What you're experiencing is the cost of breaking unhealthy family patterns, she explained. When you refuse to play the role you've been assigned, it creates discomfort for everyone who benefits from the status quo. But am I wrong to exclude them? I asked. Am I being vindictive? There's a difference between vindictiveness and protective boundaries, she replied. Ask yourself, would their presence add joy and love to your celebration, or would it bring tension and pain? Your wedding day should reflect and celebrate the authentic life you're building with Ryan. Over the following week, I reached a place of difficult but clear resolve. If my parents chose not to attend because they couldn't accept my boundary, that would be painful but necessary. I would not compromise the integrity of our celebration to maintain a facade of family unity that had never truly existed. Ryan and I proceeded with our wedding plans, grateful for the enthusiastic support of his family and our friends. The venue was secured, a historic loft in downtown Chicago with exposed brick and spectacular city views. The menu was finalized, the photographer booked, the flowers selected. Each decision we made reflected our shared aesthetic and values. No matter who's there, Ryan promised as we finalized our guest list, the day will be perfect because it will be authentically us. I held on to that promise as I navigated the uncertain terrain of family estrangement, determined to create a wedding day filled with genuine joy, even if it meant some empty seats at the family table. In the 2 months following my parents' ultimatum, wedding preparations accelerated. Ryan's mother Sandra stepped in to help with various traditional mother-of-the-bride roles, accompanying me to final dress fittings and helping coordinate details with our vendors. Her gentle support never felt like pity, only genuine excitement for our marriage. I always wanted a daughter, she confided as we selected table linens. And now I'm getting one who shares my love of mid-century design and actually appreciates my obscure music references. Ryan's father Michael offered his expertise in contract negotiation when dealing with vendors, while his sister Rachel organized a beautiful bridal shower with my Chicago friends. The Mitchells enveloped me in familial warmth without pressuring me about my own family's absence. They simply filled the space with love rather than dwelling on what was missing. My closest friends formed an equally supportive circle. Emma, my best friend since art school and now my maid of honor, became my rock. During moments of doubt or sadness about my family situation, she reminded me of how far I'd come. Remember when you used to apologize for your creative ideas? She said during one particularly emotional wedding planning session. Look at you now, designing your own invitations and confidently creating this unique celebration. That woman deserves to be surrounded by people who celebrate her exactly as she is. The unexpected phone call came 6 weeks before the wedding. I was at my desk working on place cards when my phone displayed Kimberly's name, a rare occurrence that immediately sent my anxiety spiking. Hello. I answered cautiously. Heather, it's Kim. Her voice sounded strained but controlled. I think we should meet. To clear the air. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our respective neighborhoods, the following Saturday. The cafe was busy when I arrived, but I spotted Kimberly immediately, immaculately dressed as always, her expression unreadable as I approached her table. Thanks for meeting me, she said, giving me a quick once-over that felt like an assessment. What did you want to discuss? I asked, deciding to skip the small talk. Kimberly took a measured sip of her latte. Mom and Dad told us about your decision regarding the wedding invitations. I assumed they had, I replied. They're very upset, Heather. Mom's been crying. Dad's blood pressure is up. They can't understand why you're doing this. I met her gaze steadily. I think you know why. Kimberly sighed dramatically. Look, I know there have been misunderstandings in the past. But this is your wedding. Don't you want your family there? I want people who love and support me there, I clarified. People who have shown that they value my happiness. We're your siblings, she insisted. Of course we want you to be happy. When have any of you demonstrated that, Kimberly? When you uninvited me from your wedding? When James excluded me from his? When Melissa explicitly said she didn't want someone like me at her perfect wedding? Kimberly had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Those were different circumstances. Were they? Or is it simply that you all felt entitled to exclude me, but can't handle being excluded yourselves? She leaned forward, lowering her voice. I'll be honest, Heather. Mom and Dad asked me to talk to you. They're worried about what people will say if we're not at your wedding, how it will look. And there it is, I said quietly. It's not about missing my special day. It's about appearances, about the family image. That's not fair, she protested, though without much conviction. Isn't it? Because I notice you haven't once said that you personally feel sad about not attending. You haven't expressed any genuine desire to share in my happiness or to repair our relationship. Kimberly's expression hardened slightly. Well, you haven't exactly made it easy. You've always had to do things your way, be different, stand out. Being myself isn't a deliberate act of rebellion, Kim. It's just who I am. And for the record, I did try. For years, I tried to fit into the narrow space you all allowed me. But it was never enough. Our conversation continued in circles, Kimberly alternating between guilt-tripping, Mom might not recover from this disappointment, thinly veiled criticism, if you just try to be more reasonable, and weak attempts at reconciliation that never included actual accountability. We should all just move forward and forget the past. As we prepared to leave, Kimberly made one final appeal. Just invite us, Heather. For Mom and Dad's sake. We'll all behave, I promise. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw for the first time not the intimidating older sibling who had always made me feel less than, but a woman so invested in appearances that she couldn't recognize authentic relationships. I'm sorry, Kim. My decision stands. But I genuinely hope that someday we can build a real relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. In the days that followed, James and Melissa made their own attempts at changing my mind. James sent a series of text messages that vacillated between guilt-inducing, parents are devastated, hope you're satisfied, and barely contained anger. Always about you and your feelings. Melissa opted for passive-aggressive social media posts about selfish people and the importance of family forgiveness, clearly intended for me to see. I maintained my boundary with a calm resolve that surprised even me. Years of therapy had helped me recognize that their reactions were about maintaining the family dynamic that worked for them, not about genuine care for me. 3 weeks before the wedding, a letter arrived from my father. Unlike my siblings' attempts at manipulation, his words seemed to hold a glimmer of genuine reflection. Heather, while I cannot condone your decision to exclude your siblings, I find myself reflecting on the family dynamics that led us here. Perhaps your mother and I should have been more attentive to the differences in how you were treated. However, your mother is adamant that we present a united family front. I regret that I cannot persuade her otherwise, and I must stand with her decision not to attend if your siblings are excluded. I hope you understand that this doesn't mean I don't love you. The letter was painful but also oddly freeing. For the first time, my father had acknowledged, however tentatively, that my experience in the family had been different. It wasn't a full recognition of the hurt I'd endured, but it was something. 1 week before the wedding, as final preparations reached their peak intensity, my phone rang with my mother's number. Bracing myself for another confrontation, I answered. Hello, Mom. Heather. Her voice sounded tired, lacking its usual crisp authority. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Oh, I replied cautiously. I will be attending your wedding, she said. Your father will not. He feels he cannot go against your siblings' feelings on this matter. But I don't want to miss my youngest daughter's wedding, even if I don't agree with all of your choices. I was momentarily speechless, caught between hope and wariness. Thank you. I finally managed. That means a lot to me. There's something else you should know, she continued. Your siblings know I'm attending. They're not happy about it. Kimberly mentioned they might try to come anyway, to support me since your father won't be there." The warning was clear, and I appreciated that she'd given it. "Thank you for telling me. I'll make sure it's handled." After discussing the situation with Ryan, we arranged for discreet security at the venue entrance with a clear guest list. It wasn't the lead-up to our wedding day that I had once imagined, but it was the reality we needed to address. The day before our wedding, our fears were confirmed when the venue coordinator called to inform us that she'd received inquiries from people claiming to be my siblings, asking about the ceremony details. Our security plan was now not just a precaution, but a necessity. As I fell asleep beside Ryan on the eve of our wedding, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: anticipation for the celebration ahead, sadness for the family relationships that remained broken, but most of all, profound gratitude for the authentic community we had built around us. Whatever happened tomorrow, we would face it together, surrounded by genuine love. I awoke on my wedding day to golden October sunlight streaming through the hotel room curtains. Emma and my bridesmaids arrived early, bringing coffee and breakfast, their excitement creating a bubble of joy that pushed away any lingering anxiety about family drama. As the makeup artist worked her magic and my hair was styled into soft waves with subtle purple highlights that honored my authentic self, I allowed myself to fully embrace the joy of the day. This was about Ryan and me, about the life we were building together, about the love we had found in each other. A knock at the door revealed a hotel staff member delivering a small package. Inside was a vintage silver bracelet and a note in Ryan's handwriting. "Something old that's new to you. Belonged to my grandmother, a woman who also charted her own path. I can't wait to see you walk toward our future. All my love, R." Tears threatened to ruin my freshly applied makeup, but Emma swooped in with a tissue and a gentle reminder about waterproof mascara. "Save the crying for the ceremony," she teased. "That's what we planned for in the makeup schedule." The bridal suite buzzed with activity as final preparations were made. My dress, an elegant A-line in ivory with subtle Art Deco beading that reflected my design aesthetic, was slipped over my head, the fabric settling perfectly against my skin. "You look incredible," Emma whispered as she helped adjust my simple veil. "Completely, authentically you." At the venue, I waited in a small antique room while guests were seated. The coordinator confirmed that security had turned away my siblings without incident, though the knowledge that they had actually attempted to attend uninvited sent a momentary chill through me. Then came the news that my mother had arrived, alone as expected. The coordinator guided her to the bridal waiting area for a private moment before the ceremony. When she entered, her eyes widened at the sight of me in my wedding dress. For a moment, she looked genuinely moved, a hand going to her throat. "Heather," she said softly, "you look beautiful." "Thank you for coming, Mom," I replied, a lump forming in my throat despite my determination to stay composed. "It means a lot." She approached hesitantly, reaching out to adjust a strand of my hair in a gesture that felt unexpectedly maternal. "I know this isn't how you imagined your wedding day, with family tensions and your father absent.
No, iyan ulad siya.
But I'm surrounded by people who truly support Ryan and me. That's what matters most." My mother nodded slowly. "I think I'm beginning to understand that." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "I may not have always appreciated your need to forge your own path, but watching you create this day on your terms, there's a strength in that I hadn't recognized before." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was perhaps the beginning of a new understanding. We shared a careful hug, mindful of my dress and makeup, before she was escorted to her seat for the ceremony. The wedding itself was everything Ryan and I had hoped for. The historic loft was transformed with minimal, elegant decorations that complemented the space's natural character. As our string quartet played a contemporary arrangement of our favorite song, I walked down the aisle alone, a choice that felt empowering rather than lacking. Ryan's face as he watched me approach was filled with such genuine love and admiration that any lingering sadness about my father's absence faded away. This was where I belonged, with someone who saw and celebrated me completely. Our vows, which we had written ourselves, spoke of building a life based on mutual respect, support for each other's individuality, and the family we would create together, not just through potential children, but through the community of friends and loved ones we gathered around us. Family isn't just about DNA, Ryan said in his vows, a subtle acknowledgement of my journey. It's about who shows up, who stays, who celebrates your joy, and supports you through pain. I promise to be that family for you, every day. During the reception, I noticed my mother observing the warm interactions between Ryan's family and me, perhaps seeing for the first time what supportive family dynamics could look like. As the evening progressed, she approached us during a quiet moment. "I need to say something," she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Watching you today, seeing how Ryan's family embraces you, how your friends rally around you both. It's made me reflect on things I've never questioned before." She took a deep breath. "I may not have always been the mother you needed, Heather. I was so focused on a certain image of family that I couldn't see the hurt it was causing. I can't speak for your father or your siblings, but for my part,
I'm sorry."
the simple apology, so long awaited, brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I managed. "That means more than you know." "Perhaps," she continued tentatively, "when you return from your honeymoon, we could have lunch? Just the two of us." "I'd like that," I replied, recognizing this small overture as a significant step. The rest of the reception unfolded in a blur of dancing, laughter, and celebration. Emma's maid of honor speech celebrated our friendship and my journey toward authentic self-acceptance. Ryan's best friend toasted our unique connection and shared values. When it came time for the traditional mother-son dance, Sandra warmly invited me to join, creating a moment that felt inclusive rather than highlighting what was missing. As Ryan and I departed amid a shower of eco-friendly confetti, one of our conscious choices that reflected our values, I felt a profound sense of closure and new beginning intertwined. We had created a wedding day that honored our relationship and the community that supported it, despite the complicated family dynamics that had threatened to overshadow it. In the months that followed, small but significant changes occurred in my relationship with my mother. Our promised lunch turned into a regular monthly meeting, each one slightly more open and honest than the last. She began to ask questions about my work, my interests, my perspectives, not to judge, but seemingly to understand. 3 months after the wedding, she shared that she and my father had begun marriage counseling, partly inspired by what she had witnessed at our wedding. "I realized we've fallen into patterns that might not be serving either of us," she explained, or our relationships with our children. My father remained distant, though he did send a stiff but sincere card acknowledging our marriage. My siblings maintained their position that I had been unreasonable and selfish, though Kimberly occasionally sent tentative text messages that hinted at possible future reconciliation. By our first anniversary, Ryan and I had settled into a fulfilling life together. My relationship with my mother had evolved into something I would never have thought possible, not perfect, still occasionally strained by old patterns, but increasingly authentic and respectful. On our anniversary evening, as Ryan and I shared a quiet dinner at home reflecting on our first year of marriage, I realized how profoundly my understanding of family had transformed. Family wasn't a fixed entity defined by birth, but a living connection nurtured through genuine love, respect, and celebration of each other's authentic selves. "I used to think I needed my birth family's approval to feel complete," I told Ryan as we clinked glasses in toast. "Now I understand that the ability to define family on my own terms is the greatest freedom I could have found." True belonging, I had learned, comes not from contorting yourself to fit someone else's expectations, but from having the courage to stand firmly in your authentic self and finding those who love you precisely for who you are. What about you? Have you ever had to make difficult decisions about family boundaries for your own well-being? Do you think blood ties should automatically override how people treat you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support more stories of finding authentic connection and self-worth. Thank you for being part of my journey, and may you find the courage to create the family you deserve, whether by birth or by choice.